she realizes right there that I'm not talking about Stardust. I'm talking about flamenco. That he's not on my show. It has literally nothing to do with me. And then she realizes it, cuts herself off, and
I think what I'm going to say is pretty much what other people have said here. I think engaging with people outside of your politics, engaging with people who have different strategies, engaging with people on platforms outside of Twitch politics. And like, I'm not talking about
shakes her
ridiculing people on
head.
Twitter.
Oh, shut up, you fucking
Engaging with
bitch.
people.
And then she calls Stardust a bitch. That's... Many of you might be aware that last Friday, I hosted a Hippy Dippy roundtable. I do it every Friday. It's been my staple for around 2 years. And in those 2 years, I have done my best to run a program that is fair about what it is. It states very clearly what it is. It's open with all participants about what the program is, even as the program has changed over time and morphed, with new rules being added, like rules, for example, of saying you must address participants by the preferred pronouns, you cannot attack people's immutable characteristics, you are not allowed to bring drama, unrelated drama, onto the topic. All these rules have been implemented. I have tried to be very open about what my show is and what you would expect walking into it, and not trying to surprise anybody or drag them into something that they didn't want or signed up for, right? I think this is important. I think this is important for a few reasons. I think it's important because you can burn a lot of bridges that way. I think it's important because I don't think it's good practice to lie, and that can ruin your reputation, and then other people won't trust you. I think it's good because you can give a lot of communities a bad impression of your show, and then people won't come back for your show because they got a terrible impression of who you are and the type of show you produce. It also produces a worse product because if somebody comes in there prepared for a certain type of show and then they walk into a completely different type of show, they're not going to be prepared. They're not going to be able to produce good content. It's not going to be a good show. And then everybody's worse off for it, including every panelist and me, the panel host. And I gotta say, last Friday's Hippy Dippy, which hasn't even been uploaded to YouTube. I don't know if I'm going to upload it to YouTube, because if I do, I can't even source it from myself. It was not great. Other people say it was good, but to my personal standards, I don't think it was one of our best. I think this was for a few reasons. Number one, my internet at the hotel that I was in Poland, the one I was using before I crossed the border into Ukraine, which I am in now, for anybody interested, the internet was spotty. It was not great. That's the first issue. The second issue was not only was the internet spotty, so you guys couldn't watch it here, but it also meant that I kept disconnecting and reconnecting. So if anything was going wrong, I didn't know. If it was going well, I didn't know. When people were asking me questions, I couldn't really respond to it. And if I was trying to respond to it, my mic would be cut off midway through because I would get disconnected. It was a terrible experience for me the whole time round. And when the main person who knows the most about Hippy Dippy isn't on board, that's quite bad. Now, there was another factor involved also. We had a new moderator, right? And so I don't think that made the experience any worse. I think it was actually extremely convenient given how my internet was cutting out. But it also meant that it was a different environment that I'm not used to than usual because it was run differently than I'm used to. I did send Vosh all of the rules. I was very specific about the rules. Tried to make him, basically give him a rundown beforehand. There was also the problem of I don't think all of the issues were discussed as they should be. I think that sometimes people would go off on tangents and we didn't get to talk about the first issue in depth because it went off on a tangent, on a drama, I guess, that I was involved in. And so I wasn't very happy with last week's show. And that's okay. You know, we don't produce bangers every week. Producing a roundtable every week is going to be difficult. Definitely when we're constantly trying to do new things. Me not being the host of a show is certainly a new thing. Me trying to participate in the show is a new thing. Us being down a guest and not having the traditional right-left balance that we had on that edition of the show was a new thing. We also had on guests that we hadn't had on before. And so doing all these things at the same time and also having things go wrong, things are going to naturally happen that way. And so when it comes to that, you live and you learn. I could have never known without trying. And I'm happy that I tried, even if it didn't go well. Maybe it could have gone a little differently if we didn't have as many technical issues, but that's not mainly what people remember from that show. It isn't. What people remember from that show is something that ended up leaving the Twitch platform. It went to Twitter, it went to people's DMs, and it went off the platform. And it went off into different communities. It affected my community, it affected Stardust's community, a bunch of people's communities. And that was Keffals commented on the show. Keffals, for those of you who do not know, Keffals is most well known, and this is how I know of them, for being the person who ratios people. That they say under somebody's post, I'm going to ratio you, and then they do it. That is what she's most known for. But many of you don't know, and I never announced this publicly because we do not announce when we invite people onto the show, is that we actually invited her to be on the show this past Friday. We invited her on. We invited her on May 11th, 2 days before the show was set to air. And I guess that spiraled out into an issue because Keffals, about 20 minutes into the show, put out a tweet. And the tweet, I think, makes us look pretty bad. Now let's go into the tweet first, and then we're going to talk about everything that led up to this. We're going to talk about the true timeline. We're going to talk about everything. Because I'm going to be quite honest, what Keffals said about my show and what I did is just a lie. It is not true, and she jumped to conclusions extremely quickly. She put out this tweet 20 minutes after the show had started. I got invited to the Hippy Dippy roundtable that Dylan Burns runs. I found out at the last minute someone who is friends with a neo-Nazi that has been harassing and cyberstalking me for 2 months had been invited. I backed out. The topic was, is Twitch politics toxic? Now, I'm going to tell you something, guys. At the point of this tweet, I had not spoken one word to Keffals whatsoever. Me and her had not communicated at all. I think there was literally one word said to me by Danabo that she was invited on. And this was 20 minutes into when the show starts. The show starts at 8 p.m. And this is posted at 3:20 a.m. To be specific, the reason it says 3:20 a.m. is because I was in Poland at the time, or now it's because I'm in Ukraine, or etc. Basically, this was 20 minutes after 8. 20 minutes after the show started. She didn't reach out to me. She didn't DM me or ask me about any of this. No, this is what she tweeted out. So let's talk about what led to this tweet being posted. Let's talk about the full timeline of events, because this tweet isn't the only thing. It's a few things. So let's go through the full timeline from start to finish so we can talk about exactly what happened. So, Danabo is my booker. This is the person who communicates with everybody that basically goes on my show. In a few select instances, that will not be the case. This will be because maybe a person is very high profile and I want to reach out directly to handle it or something like that. But for the vast majority of cases, Danabo is my scheduler for my show, right? So here is the rough timeline, and this is the official timeline. Okay, I've checked all of this information. Everything here is 100% accurate, and you're going to need this for what we're going to get into, because there's some things in this that specifically contradict what the narrative Keffals tried to paint about my program. Rough timeline of Hippy Dippy booking, Friday, 13th May. On the 2nd of May, original guests included Irrational Chud, Rhizome, and IRI, invited to discuss the recent "Is Twitch politics holding us back?" topic. 3rd of May, Roe v. Wade leaks, so the panel is pushed to the 6th to the 13th. I thought the Roe v. Wade leak was so important that we had to push this show back and host it on a different week. May 10th, Vosh agrees to moderate, so Dylan can participate. Invite sent to Demon Mama. Mike from PA, and Hassan on May 11th. May 11th, 2 days before the show. An invite is sent to Keffals. Now, there's an integral point I want to say here. At this point, we sent Keffals a list of the people who had already accepted. That included IRI, Rhizome, and Chud Logic. She doesn't respond. So, on May 12th, no response from her or any of the other people that we invited. So, we finish up what the topic's going to be, and then we send an invite to Stardust, Sansol, and BPF. And this is, by the way, this is normal. This is how all panels are booked. Basically, what you do when you book a panel is you send out invites to people, and if they don't accept an invite, we send another invite to somebody else to replace them. This is always how we do panels. And depending on who accepts and who does not accept, then we'll change who else we're going to invite. Because if we get 4 righties to accept, then we're not going to invite any more right-wingers. We're only going to invite left-wingers. If this person has drama with this person, then we'll probably a lot of times reschedule so this person doesn't have to be on a show with this person, depending on the topic, of course. Right? If the topic is the drama in question, which we don't really do anymore, then we might have them on, but we usually don't do that. We try to schedule it so that these people don't clash. There's a reason why you haven't seen Vosh and Destiny on a panel together, and it's because these people cannot resolve the differences and then be in the same room to debate the issues on the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. This is true for a lot of other people. We are not very public with that information because people like to keep that information private for the most part a lot of times. Not a lot of times it leaks, but a lot of people like to keep that information private. Then on May 13th, now this says 1 hour and 11 minutes before the show. Denabo corrects this in the next tweet. It wasn't 1 hour and 11 minutes before the show. 11 minutes before the show, Keffals messages us for the guest list and the topics. Denabo then immediately sends it to her. She then says, I am not going to come on because people who have engaged in my harassment against me or my friends are on this panel. She sends that message 5 minutes after the show is scheduled to start. So the show is already underway. The prep's done. Everything's done. The show is starting. And this is the first time she has given this indication to anyone working under the Hippy Dippy brand of this problem she has with somebody on my show. And from here, we can go back down to the list. She then goes onto a rant. And this is the main contention I have with Keffals. If she doesn't want to be on a show with other people, that's fine. I don't care. And this is on multiple points in this VOD. So we're just going to go from point to point. She starts saying this. I knew there was going to be a reason they were inviting me on. This is after she learns, because the person she had a contention with is Stardust and Sansol. And we're going to get into why exactly she has contentions with Stardust and Sansol in a second. But she finds out that Stardust and Sansol, who she has contentions with because of drama she has with them, she doesn't want to come on anymore. And so she starts spinning this narrative.
I knew there was a reason they were inviting me. But no, I'm not going to go on the same panel as Stardust or Sansol. Those are both really fucking terrible people.
She then goes on to say a bunch of statements. If they were serious about having trans people on my show, on the show, then they would not invite these people who have directed a serious amount of harassment towards me.
If they wanted to have a trans person on their panel, they would not invite the people who have engaged in a serious amount of harassment towards that same person.
I figured it was a setup. I got invited just to get dogpiled. I am not doing that. This is so shitty.
I don't know. At this point, it's just I got invited to get dogpiled. I'm not doing it.
She then goes on to talk about Flamenco and how Star is friends with Flamenco.
And basically, ever since the stuff with Destiny happened, he has been, he engaged in, stalking against me. He's made multiple videos about me that are just, fucking ridiculous. My name is in his bio. And Flamenco, he's friends with Stardust. And I don't really want to associate with anyone who is friends with an actual neo-Nazi.
So the main issue is that Stardust is friends with somebody called Flamenco. I know of Flamenco as a dog in a cup, and I mean that literally. He is a dog in a cup who used to host the kill stream, no longer does, and I think he describes himself as a paleo-conservative, but as somebody who I think most people would classify easily as far-right. Yeah? I don't think anybody would debate that distinction for flamenco. Would anybody distinct that or whatever? Anyway, a very far-right person has done a lot of interactions online. That is not stuff that I would care to endorse, I guess, since I've had to research a dog in a cup post this stream. But again, to be completely blunt, there's no reason I should care. Let me state that again. I don't care. Flamenco was not the person invited onto my show. If he was the person invited onto my show, then I would be concerned about behavior. And then maybe you can ask me about behavior, about his behavior towards other people on the show and stuff like that. Right? And I'm getting this right out of the way before we get into this idea that I set up this thing against Keffals. The problem here is that I book a show, a roundtable, where people with political disagreements to go on and they talk. And on that show, I invited Stardust. And Stardust is friends with somebody else, this far-right person. And by Stardust being friends with that far-right person, that then connects that far-right person to my show in some manner. Therefore, I should not invite Stardust. Because that person has engaged in bad behavior towards Keffals. And so let me repeat that again. I am a host of the roundtable, and I want to invite Stardust on. And Stardust is a friend with a far-right dog in a cup. And that far-right dog in a cup has done bad things to Keffals, according to Keffals. And therefore, through Keffals' interactions with Flamenco, who is then friends with Stardust, I should not then have Stardust onto my show because Stardust knows the dog in the cup who is far right and has done things to Keffals. Yeah, I don't care. And it's not that I don't care if Flamenco did anything wrong. It's that I'm not having him on my show. I check the backgrounds a little bit, at least to the extent that I think is necessary, of the people that come onto my program. And that has led to us turning people down when they ask to be on our show. But the idea that I don't need to only check the backgrounds of my people, of my invites, but I need to check the background of my invites' friends. And not only that, but check the backgrounds of my invites' friends and their interactions with other people on the panel. That is a unreasonable thing to ask of anybody who wants to book a show. And I'm going to hold the people who I invite onto my show to my standards. And I'm going to hold them to my standards. I'm not going to hold them to what other people that they're associated with did. In this space, that would be suicide. Because you want to know what? I'm sure it wouldn't be that difficult. And I'm not saying it's to the same extent, okay? I could look around and I could find any guest that I wanted to invite on and say, this person's associated with this person who's done a bad thing. Therefore, I'm not going to invite them on the show. So anybody who's angry at me for this, kerfluffle when it comes to inviting somebody on because she was friends with somebody else, I just don't care. And you cannot get me to care. If you could tell me Stardust is a Nazi, which she isn't, then I would care. Because then that's the person I'm inviting on. Could you imagine if I held this standard for politicians? If I wanted to invite a congressman onto my show, but that congressman said he was friends with another congressman who voted for the Iraq War that led to how many hundreds of thousands of people, then I couldn't invite anyone onto my show because every single one of those bastards has blood on their hands. Jeez. This is an insane standard to hold anybody to. And this is completely besides the point that Keffals only responded to us and asked to come on, as Danibel's bringing up in chat, 11 minutes before the show. To us, on May 12th, after 24 hours of her not responding to us when we gave her the initial invite, we're like, okay, she's not coming on, let's move on. Because that's what I do with my show. If you don't want to come on, or if you don't respond to our DMs, we don't sit there like, oh golly gee, oh golly gee, I really hope she responds last second. No, we move on and we book the show. The show must go on. That's always what we've done. And so then 11 minutes before the show, we get the reach out and then we give the full list, which had been booked under the auspices of Keffals not being on the show. She looks at that list and says, I don't like 2 of these people, so I'm not coming on. And we're like, well, Danabo's like, okay. And we proceed. And that's a setup against her? Not only is that a setup against her, but I'm supposed to care about Stardust's relations to somebody else because of what that somebody else did to you? If that person was on my show, then you could come ask me, but that person isn't even on the show. It's Stardust who's on the show. And you want to know what? We have these problems all the time. Literally all the time. All the time we'll get from somebody, hey Dylan, I don't want to come on the show this week because you're having that person on. And you know what we'll do? We'll say, okay, we'll book you next week. Or we'll book you the next time you're available. We understand, that's fine. Or hey, maybe we could try to resolve this behind closed doors so we can have you both on. Or maybe we can negotiate something, etc., etc. We do that all the time because it's a round table with streamers who are all drama hungry, content hungry, and view hungry. We do this all the time. This probably happens like once every 6 or 7 panels. So this has happened on a few occasions. And so what really gets me here is that instead of reaching out to me, instead of DMing me, and by the way, after she tweeted that out, I tried to reach out to Keffals in DMs. On both Twitter and Discord, I reach out to Keffals. Like, hey, Keffals, I'm here. If you want to talk about whatever this is in private, you've given me no information. I have no idea what the issue is. I'm on this show right now. It's my big show. If you want to talk about this in private, I am open. I said it on Twitter and DMs, on Discord. To this day, she never responded to me. But she really goes on this idea that I set this up. That this is so disgusting and so vile that I need to tweet about it.
I'm almost like wondering if I should just like put out a fucking tweet about this because like this is so fucking vile.
And when somebody says, I don't know if they knew the history, she replies, I don't care about building bridges with anyone involved.
I don't know if they knew the history. I mean, like, okay, the thing is I don't actually care about like building bridges with any of the people involved.
It's really strange that when somebody asks you like, hey, there's probably no reason for Dylan to know about your personal drama with a VTube far-right dog in a cup and their relationship with Stardust when Dylan's only thing is he invited Stardust on. And her response is, well, I don't need to build bridges with these people, so whatever. Basically admitting that I don't got like all the information here. I don't have any evidence for this accusation I'm levying. But I don't care if these people hate me, so I'm just gonna say it. Do you see the problem here? It's just like, I don't have a relationship with you, and I don't care about you. Therefore, I can say this about you, and I don't care. Because if that bridge burns, who cares? This is absolutely ridiculous. This is a ridiculous standard. Like, well, I can just make whatever accusations I want about people with no evidence because I don't like them and I don't care about them. There's a lot of people in the space I don't like, right? But if I just randomly just accused Mike from PA of attempting to dox me with no evidence, I think that it would be perfectly fair for people to criticize me and say, yo, that's a pretty big thing to levy. They tried to set me up for this shit. Look at this. Look, and I'm not exaggerating her words. Let's play them in there. If you want to check any of these links, I'll provide any of them.
It's like incredibly frustrating that they tried to like set me up for this shit.
Like again, at this point, like I've already sent her DMs. Like we can discuss this in private. Like if or like she actually tweets this in a little bit, I think. So I haven't at this point said that, but she's already jumping to conclusions without messaging me, without asking like, yo, I had drama with this person. Did you book me specifically so we could have drama? So we could have a thing happen? And then next, she tweets this out. I got invited to Hippy Dippy Roundtable that Dylan Burns runs. I found out at the last minute someone who's friends with a neo-Nazi that's been harassing and cyberstalking me for 2 months has been invited. I backed up. The topic was, is Twitch politics toxic? So let's be clear. This is the narrative that's being spun here at this point. The narrative is that Dylan Burns set up a trans woman to be ambushed on his show who had guests on it with neo-Nazi far-right stalking ties. When all that happened was that I invited Stardust on after I thought Keffals wasn't going to come on, because when somebody doesn't come on, somebody doesn't respond, you move on. And then Keffals messages me 11 minutes beforehand. We give her the guest list. She's like, I don't like this person. Then starts tweeting about neo-Nazis in relation to Hippy Dippy. This wasn't a grand plan to ambush Keffals. I don't care enough or know enough about Keffals to plan an ambush of Keffals. All I know is that she's like the ratio person, right? I don't know what else she does. But instead, it's Dylan's organizing ambushes with people with neo-Nazi ties, when that isn't what happened. And she doesn't have any evidence to substantiate that happened. Besides, this person was on the show that I ended up not informing the people about the show that I wanted to be on. By the way, let's say that she said at that point, let's say Danable came back to me 5 minutes before the show, said, hey, Keffals wants to be on. I wouldn't have let Keffals on my show. 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, I just tell everybody, hey, Keffals is going to be there. And I know that Keffals, is probably not going to last well in that environment, because I booked the show around the idea Keffals isn't going to be here. Let's book people who I think can work well with each other. I'm not going to just throw another person in last second like that. And so now she's angry. She jumps to conclusions and starts tweeting about this. And you want to notice something about this tweet that really gets me? Not this tweet. This tweet's banger. But this tweet that gets me, I'm the only person, the only name that's mentioned here. Stardust isn't mentioned here. Flamenco, who is the person in question she doesn't like, isn't mentioned here. I'm the only person that's mentioned here. My brand, my roundtable is the only thing in me that's mentioned here. Meaning I'm the only one that's associated with neo-Nazis and cyber-stalking. Even though I didn't invite a neo-Nazi, and I have nothing to do with cyber-stalking, and that I also, when she goes on her stream to talk about ambushing, I didn't organize an ambush of her. I don't understand what gets this response. Just message me privately if you have concerns. But going to your Twitter so you can get your updates and your like-a-runos. This is strange behavior. I don't understand this. Anyway, let's go back. Let's keep going. He tried to set me up. She then tweets this. At no point did she message me or reach out to me for an explanation. I was sent no information about cyberstalking or flamenco or anything. And let me say something. Somebody in chat mentioned hey, maybe you should give them a message saying either you boot this person or I'm not coming on, right? Which people have done that to us in the past. We never accept those, by the way. We will not let other people dictate who we have on. If people bring us information that shows us why we shouldn't have a person on, and we agree with that information, then we won't have them on. But if you're telling me 5 minutes after a show has started that Stardust knows somebody else who's engaged in cyberstalking and or harassment of you, so it's not even Stardust, it's somebody else, right? You've given me no time to do research. You've given me no time to look into the accusations. And let me tell you something. I've learned a pretty valuable lesson about doing research into accusations, and I'd like to stick by that lesson. And that was not done here. I was 20 minutes after a show, she's tweeting this out, and that's the way I found out about it, was the tweet. If you want somebody to, respond to an issue you have with your show, you gotta reach out more in advance, and you've gotta give them the information, give them the proof, give them some substance. You can't just 20 minutes after a show has started, this person is tied to this person, etc. 11 minutes before the show is when she reached out. And it was 5 minutes after the show started that she even brought up the cyber stalking, any of this. So it was already too late. It was already too late. Let's finish this up. Shortly after, I reached out to her in DMs and offered to talk to her in private, both on Twitter and on Discord. She never responded to any attempt to reach her. She has still not responded. I mean, that is in private. She never sent me a message or anything in response or tried to be like, nah, I'm not interested. She then watched the panel and talked about it and sniped at people's talking points. You know, this is why also, can I just, look at this.
Where they get all their big numbers, it isn't Twitch.
Already, burner accounts.
He doesn't get the same numbers he gets on YouTube.
Tagging her.
All these people,
Men are not women is the name of the account. This is the kind of shit. This is why I didn't go on.
General platform, but its home is always going to be gaming and entertainment. And so I think due to that aurora, the way to get other Twitch viewers into politics is not the same way on YouTube. And that's why it's going to be a lot more entertainment focused.
To be clear, this was the only quote tweet that she showed. Now, that's terrible. That is awful. That is bad that somebody would do that. But a single quote tweet is not representative of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. We're toxic in our own other way. We have tried to implement rules and regulations when it comes to transphobia in our community, specifically when it comes to the idea that you cannot misgender people, you must use people's preferred pronouns. We've been trying to stray a little bit farther away from a lot of the discourse with people. I'm not going to bring on people who are not going to pronoun people, respectfully. These are the type of stuffs we do. And I do want to bring this up, not as that isn't bad, but I don't think that's representative of our community, right? Now, if you want to bring that up with Stardust's community or whatever, I guess that's your own thing. But I do want to say that is an account with 0 followers and following 0. It seems to be an account specifically made to piss people off. I don't think that's representative of our community. I think that's representative of a hateful troll, and that's all that is, right? It's bad. And can I also say, my trolls have gotten a lot weirder since I've come to Ukraine. The trolls I've been getting now are just DM, I'm going to send your geolocation to the Russian army so they can kill you in Ukraine. I don't like my trolls, I'm going to be honest. They're a little meaner. If they were just like Lego head, I'd be like, okay. But that doesn't seem to be what they're doing anymore. Let's keep going. She continued to say that I set this up to ambush her. Let's play.
I think Big Papa Fascist is right, but there's 2 caveats.
This feels like an attempt. Yeah, no, they were trying to.
Be seasonal to how much news is going on.
So what the chatter says, this feels like entrapment. They were trying to. Okay, we're gonna go through a little bit more just to show she really doubled down all throughout the stream. Never walked it back. Never walked it back. This is another stamp. They were trying to trap me. Okay, and then she responds to my tweet that I sent in response. But anyway, you know what? Let's finish this first, because I just want to respond to this idea that I was trying to trap her. Because this is nonsensical. This doesn't make any sense. And then we'll wrap it up by her responding to me being as polite as physically possible in my response to her, okay? And this is it. So number 1, if I was trying to trap you, why would I make Vosh the moderator? As far as I know, Vosh doesn't hate you. If I wanted to entrap you, I would have been the moderator, and I would have been the one to do it. If I wanted to entrap somebody, then why would I make somebody who is friendly with you the moderator of the discussion? That's the first thing. The second thing, and I can provide DMs and evidence for all of this, I invited you on May 11th. You didn't respond until 10 minutes before the show, when it was basically going to be extremely difficult for you to get on the show at that point, from my perspective. Danabo could tell you something different. If he came to me and said Keffals wants to come on at this point, the odds of you coming on at that point were slim at best. But 24 hours following that, me and Danabo sit down and we decide who we're going to send invites out to next. And that is when Sansol and Stardust were invited. Because then we were making a show that wasn't going to have Keffals, wasn't going to have Mike from PA, wasn't going to have Hassan, wasn't going to have any of these people. It was going to have people like Chud Logic, Vosh, etc. And so we built a show around that. If Keffals would have accepted the invite, then we might have made more note of this, and Keffals could have came to us and said, oh, you wanted to invite that person? No, I have a problem with them. And I'll be like, okay, we'll invite them on for a different show. Which is stuff we do all the time. We make those arrangements all the time. The lineup would have looked very different, exactly, because we would have to rebalance the show. Because we look at people and we're like, okay, this person's very aggressive, so we're going to have to put somebody on the other side who can deal with them. And we try to balance shows out in a lot of ways. We really do. It's very difficult to actually build a well-balanced panel with 7 to 8 voices that aren't going to just descend in complete chaos. And so it wasn't entrapment. We made a show that wasn't designed for you. It wasn't designed for you to be on. And then you get angry because the show you didn't even accept the invite for, didn't reach out to us, wasn't designed for you to be on. Of course it wasn't designed for you to be on. You weren't meant to be on the show because you didn't accept the invite, and the only time you responded was 10 minutes beforehand, only to then say, well, this person is friends with this person, fuck you, and then you went into a tirade on how we set up entrapment against you. That is an extremely self-centered view of the situation. To see people you don't like on a show that you were invited to before, and you jump to the conclusion, this was all designed to trap me. This was a show designed to get me. That's extremely self-centered. That's not what happened. I don't care enough about Keffals to do that. And so I guess just for me, just next time reach out in private. Just message me and I can explain to you exactly what happened. You didn't accept the invite, so we moved on without you. That's what we do. You don't accept an invite, so we move on under the auspices of you were not going to be there. It wasn't an ambush against you. The reason there were certain people there, like more aggressive people or people that maybe you wouldn't have gotten along with, was because we weren't thinking about, well, what if Keffals was here? Because we didn't think you were going to be there because you didn't accept the invite. So we redesigned the show. We invited different people to fill the gap that you left because you weren't going to be there. And then I sent a tweet in response to her tweet. Basically like, well, I'll read it before she responds to it, because a response, leaves much to be desired.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned it earlier.
Oh, I
think that
see.
there's a
Dylan
balance
has
of
responded.
entertainment to information that you.
Let me go again to her original tweet. I can actually just read out my tweet. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. So she tweets, I got invited to Hippy Dippy by the Dylan Burns guy show, and I found out last minute someone is from the Nazi, etc., etc. You got it. That sounds bad, but that person is not on my show. No one forces you to go on panels, and it's okay if you don't want to go on panels, or just my panel specifically. But this has nothing to do with me, really. Hope you have a nice weekend, Kev. Also, no bully, please. No one DM Kef or anyone if she is upset about someone cyber stalking her. That is completely understandable, even if I don't think I have anything to do with it. Anyone that does anything like that will be banned from my community and blocked, vibes above all. And this is her response.
You can give on any
that sounds bad, but that person is not on my show. No one forces anyone to go on panels, and it's okay if you don't want to go on panels or just my panel specifically. This has nothing to do with me, really. You run the fucking show, dipshit.
Not just staying stuck just in Twitch politics is probably a really good move for that. If you're trying to keep people informed, you have to make sure that there are people in your audience to inform. So I think that that's probably something that Twitch politics should focus on. And again, I keep on going back to this, but I do think that a lot of
what a fucking weasel.
Weasel.
Intermingling between communities, actually engaging with other content creators, even if you're not like me and you don't like to argue.
It's
like
bait.
if you want to go and just hang
Should I
out
not
with another
respond?
content creator in the politics community or outside of the politics community and actually engage outside of just your stream where you're sitting there and playing Minecraft or League of Legends all day, right? That's probably going to be a way to make this space more healthy, add to the viewer pool, add to everybody.
What a fucking loser.
A little bit more of a slice of the pie,
I think he thinks you were talking about flamenco.
Okay, thank you. And Stardust, please Cap us off.
Yeah.
She realizes right there that I'm not talking about Stardust. I'm talking about Flamenco. That he's not on my show. It has literally nothing to do with me. And then she realizes it, cuts herself off, and
I think what I'm going to say is pretty much what other people have said here. I think engaging with people outside of your politics, engaging with people who have different strategies, engaging with people on platforms outside of Twitch politics. And like, I'm not talking about
shakes her
ratio
head.
people on Twitter.
Oh, shut up, you fucking
engaging with
bitch.
people-
And then she calls Stardust a bitch. That's... She realizes at the end of it that her conclusion about the tweet was wrong. That it wasn't talking about Stardust. It was talking about how Flamenco has nothing to do with my show because he's not on my program. Because one of the chatter brings it up to it. She cuts herself off, then moves on to just call Stardust a bitch. That's the response. That's the double down. Well, at least she backtracked. She didn't backtrack. She just cut herself off. It'd be like if I said, the capital of America is Dallas. And then someone said, I thought the capital was Washington, D.C. I hate Destiny. The reason it's not my issue because he's not on my show. It has nothing to do with me. And you want to know the funniest part? That I'm angry. She's angry at me because of Flamenco. When I said nobody go bully Kev or anybody, Flamenco responds, could you imagine being cry-bullied by a neurotic weirdo and so terrified of her schizo community that you beg her not to incur the wrath and treat her unhinged rats as hecka valid? Lol, grow a backbone, dude. Flamenco calls me spineless because I tell my community to not, go, bully her or whatever. So not only does Keffals not like me, but the reason she's angry at me also is calling me spineless. There's, no way for me to win here. I'm done. I'm just screwed. I'm Poland between the Soviets and Germany. I just got no options. My goodness. I'm a loser because I won't accept the fact that he has nothing to do with my program. Anyway, by the way, this is what Keffals says about me reaching out. And I can read the DMs to be very specific about what was said, okay?
If everyone's
Dylan also
not
reached
in the
out to
court,
me
at
in
least, if
DMs
everyone
and was
cannot
like,
find in each other enough to
the
disagree
cyber
and to
stalking's
argue over
pretty
it, then,
cringe, bro.
there is something that was touched on by a few.
That's it. That's the only acknowledgement. There's no fault. She doesn't respond to me. She doesn't try to talk to me in private to see if we could resolve in this situation, if we could come to an understanding so I could explain that this wasn't a setup. She has no interest in it. She's just like, Dylan messaged me and said cyber stalking was bad. Let me see if I can read what exactly I sent her. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it off stream very quickly. Because it was just like a polite message of look, if you want to talk, I don't understand what you've given me no information. I just want to know. If you want to talk in private about the cyber stalking thing, totally up to it. Don't want you to enable, Don't want to enable or for you to think I'm enabling any behavior like that in any fashion. Because again, at this point, I know, and I still don't know anything at all about Flamenco and cyberstalking. Throughout this whole thing, no one has ever explained to me how Flamenco cyberstalked or what Flamenco did or any of that. Why? Because Keffals never told me. Nobody told me. So how am I supposed to kick people off the show for people that they didn't even do, but somebody they knew did and is again unrelated to the show and nobody even told me what they did and they tell me 20 minutes into the program. And then tries to just cook up this ludicrous lie that I designed a show to ambush this trans woman with these people with neo-Nazi ties and cyber-stalking ties. Very, very strange, very bizarre, very delusional. And I don't know what else to say. And the thing is, I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to book Keffals as the person who would be talking about hey, toxicity's bad, etc., etc. We need to probably have less drama in the space. But I've walked away from it thinking that would have been a terrible booking decision because Keffals did something incredibly toxic here. which is didn't talk to the people in private, was not considerate of the people putting the show together by like reaching out like 10 minutes before, telling me all this information 5 minutes after, trying to associate my name with neo-Nazis and stalking. I'm the only person mentioned. And then tries to like cook up this idea that I was trying to ambush a trans woman on my show with people who harass her. With again, never talking to me about what happened, about why Stardust is on the program or why Sansol is on the program, any of that. Just jumped to conclusions, didn't communicate, and was just wrong on every level. Just lied about my program because she didn't have the information that she could have easily accessed if she would have messaged me. And she would have been explained to very simply like, these are how panels are booked. We book people. Then when people don't respond to the DMs and they don't get back to us, we book other people to fill those spaces. That's how panels have always been booked. And this show was not looking like this when we tried to invite you. In fact, we told you the guest list when we tried to invite you. If you would have accepted it, the guest list would have looked differently because we like to make sure that the panels go smoothly when it comes to the guest list. Very poor communication skills. Would not hire in my HR department. The fact you are wasting brain cells on this for this long, move on and ignore these people. No, I want to talk about it. Because people talk about my show in a disparaging way all the time. But it's very aggravating for me to invite somebody onto my show and then they just go on and lie about my show after I try to invite them. Like, if you don't want to be on my show, just say, I don't want to come on. Like, that's it. This is unbelievably aggravating. To be fair, Sansol has spread this info about her and embezzled money from the CPC. Okay, and you want to know what? He wouldn't have been on a show if she would have accepted the invite. He would have been on a different show. And it would have been a different program. All she had to do was ask about the information or get back to us sooner and not 10 minutes before the program starts. God, you think I would book Hassan and Destiny on the same panel? Of course I wouldn't, because I understand those people, especially Hassan, doesn't want to be on the same show together. They don't want to associate with one another. I understand this. I've been booking shows for over 2 fucking years. These are very basic things about panels. You just know this shit. God, if she would know anything about panels or about my show, she would know this too. But she knew nothing. She didn't ask any questions. She jumped to conclusions. And that's what angers me. Is that I never did anything to fucking Keffals. But then at the end of this, she walks away trying to associate my name with neo-Nazis and stalkers, even though they're not even on my program. She tries to say that I'd set up an ambush against her with those same ties, right? Didn't happen. Not true. Completely falsified. And she wouldn't even respond to my DMs when I'm trying to reach out to her to resolve the situation. All because she jumped in 10 minutes before the program's supposed to start and starts dropping this. Like when it's already too late. Because she didn't get back to us when we invited her. It was 48 hours later. This is terrible behavior. This is toxic behavior, which is ironic. This is not how you engage with other streamers. You just resolve stuff. This is like simple shit you resolve in private. You just say like, oh, okay, I'll schedule you for a different thing. It's so aggravating. Because this was supposed to be like a Hippy Dippy roundtable that was supposed to be fun. Because it was supposed to be the first Hippy Dippy roundtable that I got to participate in. My internet's cutting out. I can't even stream the thing. Meaning Keffals made more money off that roundtable by picking donos while she listened than I made. And I organized the thing. Whatever. I'm done. I'm done talking about it. This was bad. And this also helped me come to a realization. Because everybody knows I've been on that anti-drama arc. I now feel that it is impossible to be a streamer who engages with other streamers in the capacity most streamers do and not be a drama fiend. I think it's impossible. Because when I think of everybody that are like the anti-drama people, like the people that's related with politics on Twitch, they're all actually like very engaged with drama. They just do it sometimes indirectly and through just response video after response video. Like Keffals just did it this way through her stream, right? And this all could have been avoided with just some basic communication skills, right? Hassan has done it with people like Adam something, right? He has done it with other people before he's gotten in the drama train, right? And gone back and forth. Mike from PA, I don't even want to get into that. Oh my God. I realizing that I think that, like, if you're a commentary channel or a politics channel, or you're one of these channels that are just like in the just chatting section generally, and you engage with other streamers, and when dealing with contentious issues, like, this is inevitable. I think it's just inevitable. I think it can feed it less than other people, as people in chat are bringing up, and I'm starting to think it's inevitable, and that makes me pretty doomer-pilled. Gotta say. Mike was in Keffals' chat participating in the drama anyway. I mean, that's not surprising, right? It isn't surprising whatsoever. And also, can I just say, the whole time she was complaining, like, man, this is a real shit show, and all these people are wrong, etc., etc. The thing is, if all people from one side of an issue, like, accept to be on my show, and all the people from the other side of an issue won't come on, there's only so much I can do. And if I want to talk about how we can improve this, I was the only person on that roundtable saying, like, I think we have a reputational issue and we need to address it. I would notice that anytime anyone else was talking, Keffals would, like, snipe their points. But anytime I was talking, Keffals was mostly silent, listening and agreeing, or just talking about something else, right? Because she didn't really disagree with much of what I was saying. If I had some backup on some of these points, I think it could have been done better. And that's not to say I think me and Keffals agrees on everything on these issues, but I'm sure we could have found more common ground on this. And it feels like a lost opportunity. Could have been a much better show. Whatever. Joe Lewis. Oh yeah, Joe Lewis wrote okay. So Joe Lewis is a guest from our show in the past. I think he goes Budamu Damu now, or something along those lines. He has been on our show, and he talks about the booker who booked that roundtable that we were just talking about. And Denabo says this could put some light on the issue at hand here. And Joe Lewis, great guest. He's always been happy. I always loved having him on the show. I mean, I've always been happy with his performances. On July 23rd, 2021, I had a situation come up where I could not go into the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. It was 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. hit. I was panicking. I did not want to leave Danabo, the person who booked me, high and dry, so I scrambled for an hour to fill. Once I was able to confirm that Shark Zero was okay and could replace me, I gave his name to Danabo, ended up being this panel. He links to Hippy Dippy Roundtable. I guarantee you, by and large, panelists don't do this. Panelists have and still leave producers high and dry. Some are invited and never show up. Keffals. Some leave the invite on red. Actually, this is more Keffals. Some accept the invite and don't do any research on the topic. Some accept the invite and leave halfway and force the producer and host to find a replacement mid-panel. This happens all the time. We actually were going to have somebody called Ashton Mack on last Friday, who was somebody who I think would have disagreed with a lot of people on the show, but he said he could only be in for 45 minutes, so we ended up not booking him because it would have made the panel booking 10 times harder. All of these things lead to a bunch of problems. The list goes on and on. I'm not a saint in this. I've done this to people as recently as a month ago. Booking people is hard, and producers and hosts have zero monetary options to make sure people see some type of consequence. There is nothing stopping anyone from doing this outside of mutual respect of the space. After the nonsense between Aircraft Sparky, Fabian Liberty, and Scott, Danabo and Dylan made an effort to do a few things. So basically, let me talk about what happened here. And this is really important because this is how I run my fucking show, okay? I fucking love my goddamn show. And I don't think enough people know that, how much I care about this show. So what happened was that Fabian Liberty Spark and Aircraft Sparky had a moment, right? And it was like a really like drama moment. And like Aircraft Sparky said something about Joe Lewis's DNA. And it was a moment, right? And so, but that same guy was invited. It was a drama they had between each other, right? But Aircraft was going to be on a show, and I'm like, oh, snap. We booked this guy. He's going to be on the show. It's a little too late, but Joe Lewis is also going to be on the show. We're trying to figure it out, right? And so this is what we ended up doing. Dylan reached out to me personally to ask if I took issue with him having Aircraft Sparking on for future projects. Not directly, but that was essentially the conversation. I said no. My reasoning was, okay, I think if there's anybody who should be the judger on if this guy comes on or not, it should be the person who was I don't want to say victim, but the person who received the comment. Aircraft Sparky and I have been on panels together since, albeit limited. Danabo explicitly gave me heads up that Fabian was invited to Dylan's New Year bash. Fabian and I were on a portion of the stream with little to no issue. Danabo reached out to me directly on an invitation to a panel and told me that he has also sent invitations to Aircraft Sparky. He also did this concerning Fabian Liberty, also known as Scott. I understood that and accepted the invite. The reason why I bring this up is because a lot of work goes behind the scenes of making panels, especially ones like Hippy Dippy's. Hosts and producers collaborate on topics. Topics are finalized. Invitations are determined based on topics. Panelists confirms. Group chats created, etc., etc. This sounds like mundane, easy work, but it's incredibly stressful. I believe Danabo to be doing the best he can given the cards he's given. When you look at the final roster on a panel and you wonder, why is blank not here? The answer is usually A, they were invited and declined. B, they were invited and did not respond. Keffals. C, they may be utilized for something down the road and wanted to give someone else an opportunity. This could also mean that they had drama with somebody else on this specific panel, so we booked them for a future panel because we want to still get them on the show, but we know that this specific show isn't workable. D, they were lost in a sea of possible people and it slipped to Danabo's mind. And E, there were other factors at play that had them not be invited. Don't fall into the trap of defaulting to option D each time a dumpster fire topic happens. Danabo pays attention to more content than I think people give him credit. If he does not know you, he probably knows of you. Not every week is a home run, but he tries to make it work. And so Danabo was the person who tried to book Keffals, and I want to again thank Danabo for doing the work he put in last Friday, even if the show did not go exactly as planned. He does this every Friday, and I appreciate the work he does for me. I could not run this show while I'm going across Europe into a fucking war zone without him. And so I really appreciate him. Thank you, Danabo. And this is the type of work we put in to make sure that the panel has enough, is able to function. And so yes, if we had booked Keffals, the show would have gone different and we would have had different guests. Dylan, have you considered not having any panelists and just playing different characters for Hippy Dippy? Only way to make sure you don't accidentally invite a friend of a friend of a friend of a meanie? True.